All right, so I'm going to get my glasses out here. That's a very tough act to follow. So we got a lot to live up to here, guys. I've been up on this stage a lot of years. A few years back, mobile was going to take over, and it was going to upend the OTAs. A few years after that, it was going to be voice-based search, and the OTAs were done. And now, throughout a lot of the last few days here, we've talked about AI. Right, and is that going to be the thing? Is this finally the death knell for the search-based internet models we all grew up with? What do you think? Mark, kick us off.
Yes.
All right, we're out of here. We're done.
Well, I think it's just going to make search, the travel research and planning process, so much better, so much more robust. It's a night and day difference, or maybe it's a night and evening difference, but whatever, it's a significant difference. And that could create a lot. It's not going to obviate or undermine the existence of OTAs. Now, OTAs, this could limit their ability to expand up the funnel, what they call travel research and planning. And they need to be a little faster, I think, in rolling out some of these agentic agents that they've been kind of toying with for a couple of years. Expedia, Romy, Priceline, Penny, these things have been too long in beta. They need to roll these out much more quickly. That's my opinion. But I think what these wonderful abilities to put together travel itineraries, is Gemini. It's in Gemini. It's in chat, and so I look at it as more just the creation of a new lead generation platform for the OTAs, and they're very good at optimizing different platforms. They figure out how much to spend, what the ROI is on Google Hotel Product Finder and Google Flights and Meta, and they'll figure out the same thing with AI mode and the same thing with ChatGPT. I'm pretty certain that that's what's going to happen. But there is this opportunity to get higher up in the travel funnel, and I think they're missing it. And that's the one risk I see to them. I think this is just going to make travel better, the travel process better, going to remove friction. And when you do that, people are going to do more. It should be a good facilitator, should be an accelerator for online travel.
Now, I might take a little bit of the other side of some of that, right? So AI travel planners, big topic here over the last couple of years. So far, to me, it feels just like a repackaging of traditional paid search. It doesn't feel all that different to me. I don't know, Lloyd, what's your take?
Yeah, it's fun hearing Steve Kaufer yesterday say this is what Frommer was doing, top three things to do in a city before I was born. Yeah. But I agree with Mark. Like I think it is a great consumer experience to kind of consolidate all this stuff and make it really easy to aggregate information. That's what LLMs are really good at. We've all seen the Google Think with Google data on how many sites people visit before making a booking. And so I think this will make travel planning a lot easier. So much of the debate when we talk to investors or here is around whether or not the direct hotel direct take share or OTA. The thing that I'd be more worried about as an OTA is even if agentic booking doesn't happen, even if share doesn't shift, if the product experience is so good that people increasingly go back to Google, they don't make a lot of money when they're acquiring traffic through Google. I think it's 80 cents on the dollar of acquired traffic goes back to Google. So, that's not good for their business if these products do drive less traffic direct. And it does seem like that this may be the thing that does it. But it's funny, you mentioned earlier, I remember on this stage, Oliver Heckman from Google talking about how you're going to be on your road trip and you're going to say, hey, Google, book me a hotel with strong Wi-Fi and a pool. And I'd be shocked if 5 people did a booking by voice back in the day. So, I've seen enough of these cycles to be skeptical.
Yeah, interesting. Emma, your take?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's interesting is when we think about AI and agentic AI for travel, we tend to focus on top of the funnel, right? We tend to focus on the curation and the discovery process and how that filters down to booking. And I think the reality is that's always been a really tough bridge to go from, I'm planning this trip, I'm planning it a year in advance and then actually going down booking. I think where you're seeing some of the impact of AI in a really positive way is around some of the more back-end processes, right? So it's not a coincidence that where some of the highest ROI in AI spend it's coming in call center support and customer service. It's coming in product creation. I mean, someone was telling me yesterday that the pace at which they're creating software products is just expanding dramatically. It's coming in fintech products. It's coming in content creation for advertising and return on investment in advertising. And so I think that there are elements of AI that are incredibly beneficial to the industry and to the larger players in the industry that are actually in some ways more near term and easier to get to than some of the more top of the funnel items.
And so mentioned across every answer so far has been Google. And for many, many years, Google has kind of had a stranglehold on the industry. Does this unlock that? Are we looking at a world that's not 100% top of funnel dominated by Google, and is that a good thing? Mark, what do you think?
I think it is a good thing. So you are going to get diversification of traffic. You know, get this, I think it's now 10% of bookings, performance marketing spend goes to Meta. Now, it took about 8 years for that to shift over, so it takes a while. But it's good that there's a diversification of, I mean, for the OTA business models for a Booking and Expedia, and for an Airbnb too, it's good that there's a diversification, like basic economics, diversify the supply, good for the network in the middle. So now you can use Google, you can use Meta. There's very good, highly qualified traffic coming from Meta, and now ChatGPT. And I think the signal that these companies is seeing, the quality of the leads that are coming, they're not being charged yet, that's coming. But the quality of the leads is, I think, is reasonably good, although it's still very early days. But that's a good thing for these businesses, is probably a good thing for all of us. Yeah, to get multiple sources, but maybe more important than whether diversification for consumers is better or not. Competition certainly is. I mean, Google search, you know, if anybody here that thinks that Google search hasn't improved in the last 2 years, like, I think you're missing something, and I think everybody's probably seen that it's materially improved. And why? Because of competition. So ChatGPT came in and kicked its butt and came up with a really wonderful, much better search experience. It's much broader than just a search experience, an agentic experience, and it kind of really kicked Google into high drive. And so I think we're all benefit from the fact that the agentic experience is just a lot better, a lot more powerful, and it's an agentic experience. It's not just information. It's going from information to deep research to task. Now, task completion's got a long way to go, and I think that's where the travel partners come in. But this is just great for all of us. And again, I'll just stick with the basic point that's sometimes missed. Just like mobile accelerated online travel, I think the agentic experience can accelerate online travel because it makes it better, and if things get better, people do more of it.
Yeah. Lloyd or Emma?
I'm with Mark. I think it's great to see more competition in search. I think ChatGPT is, clearly rolled out an amazing product. They're innovating really quickly, and like you said, they're putting pressure on Google, and I think Google is moving faster themselves as a result. So I think it's healthy for the consumer ecosystem and for the OTAs to just have that perspective diversification.
Yeah, you hit on this a little bit, Emma, monetization, right? So we've talked a little bit about the AI layer. A lot of capital has flowed in there, certainly, and at some point we all think about dollars and cents. They're going to have to start thinking about dollars and cents. Monetizing AI, is that a year away? Is that 2 years away? And what kind of models should we be thinking about when that evolves?
Yeah, I mean, in the context of travel, sort of putting the hyperscalers and LLMs aside, I think the direct monetization is going to be hard to measure. Right? Like, I think that what you're generally going to see is that, and it's, I think, to Mark's point, which is that it's just a better consumer experience, and so it's a better consumer experience, and so from that, people, the sort of flow of dollars may shift, but I'm not sure that it's going to be that easy to directly report and say this AI feature that we add has sort of this much benefit from a valuation side. That's actually why, in some ways, I think some of where you're seeing the most data come out is on things like call center support and saying it has this, this fewer human touch points or this much margin expansion opportunity. I think we've seen some data come out around sort of ROI on ad spend, but it tends to be these things where I think they're cost centers where it's just easier to quantify what is the impact versus direct monetization of AI from a revenue generating standpoint. I think, and there's probably a number of people in the audience who are thinking about AI startups or sort of AI businesses that they're expanding within the space. And I think that the question always we hear from investors is, for some of the newer businesses, is this a AI feature or is this a business? And so how do you create an AI company that is addressing a massive opportunity that takes into consideration sort of the complexity around monetization, supply dynamics, et cetera, such that this isn't an add-on to someone else's business, but a standalone massive business opportunity?
Yeah, and I guess, Lloyd, as I'm thinking about some of the risk and some of the challenges that are posed by AI, what I hear from investors, there's really two fears. Fear number one is AI will go direct to the supplier and cut out the OTAs. Their advantage over the years has been built on their supply aggregation. The other fear, and I think you hit on this earlier, is, well, maybe all the traffic, instead of coming in through the app and being free to the OTA, now comes in through AI. Which of those or both of those, how are you thinking about the threat level of AI to the OTAs, and where does it come from?
Yeah, in our conversations with investors, it seems like there's more concern around disintermediation than the flow of traffic through Google. I personally am more worried about the flow of traffic to Google than disintermediation. I think it's a risk, the disintermediation, but the OTAs do bring more to the table. And if you're a company like OpenAI, do you want to work with 100,000 partners or a few partners, at least initially? And then remember, we all thought when Google Hotel Finder and metasearch came out that would level the playing field with Hotel Direct, but in the end, I think OTAs have a higher share of clicks out of Meta than they did out of generic search. So again, like having seen that episode, I'm skeptical that the bots are going to book you direct more. Yeah. It's something to monitor. Certainly the hotels are talking a lot about this. But the direct traffic risk seems more real. I mean, these are great products. The other thing I'm not hearing as much about, but in conversations here yesterday, somebody pointed out, with Gemini now built into Chrome, you can be sitting on a hotel listing page or an Airbnb listing and go ask Gemini, can you find this cheaper for me somewhere else? So there are these left field risks. It does feel like things are changing quickly, and it could take. There's a lot of areas to be worried if you're an investor in the OTA space.
And Emma, I want to switch gears a little bit. You're on the banking side. Typically, it's us analyst folks up here talking. So a lot of capital has flowed into the AI side, and there's a lot of companies here that want to raise money. Is there still an opportunity to raise money if you're not somehow AI related?
Definitely is the answer. I think that as it relates to AI has been something that companies have to address when they're trying to raise capital. And there's one of two ways to address that. Either you're a company that AI is a massive beneficiary to, you're enabling AI in a way, right? And then the question is what I said before, which is, are you a feature or are you a big company? Yeah. For companies for whom AI is not necessarily front and center in terms of what you're doing, the question then just becomes one of disruption. Are you long-term going to be disrupted in a world where there's so much uncertainty around AI, which we were just talking about? And so, I think where we're seeing companies be successful in communicating with investors, it's around what is the proprietary data advantage that you have? What is the proprietary systems advantage you have? For example, suppliers, do you have long tail suppliers? We've seen some corporate travel businesses be really successful. Do you have access to corporations or enterprises in a differentiated way? And so because of that, you are sort of inherently less disruptible from an AI perspective. But the one other point I just make around private capital raising is I think one of the things we've seen this year, which has been really healthy for the industry, is we've started to see some travel tech businesses go public. We saw a B2B business earlier in the year. We saw corporate travel. There's a experiences marketplace publicly on file. I think we see a number of other businesses lining up to go next year. Some that have kicked off drafting, some that we expect to. And when we think about IPOs, and some of the companies in this room may be somewhat far from that, they're really healthy for the overall ecosystem, because as investors start to see the potential to monetize, it then starts to feed down and private funding starts to free up and it starts to go down through that. And they're also really healthy from an M&A perspective, because what you see is you see a whole nother group of companies that suddenly become buyers because they have public currency to buy other companies. And you also see companies who are starting to think about, should I go public or should I sell? And so the M&A ecosystem becomes more healthy as well.
Are there specific subcategories in travel tech you might call out? I know you can't talk about specific company names, so I won't ask you that, but are there specific areas?
I think what we're seeing is very related to the conversation we've been having around the uncertainty around how do you build a consumer demand and how do you build traffic. And so I think that's the space where investors are still somewhat nervous about investing behind if it's a true B2C business where it's dependent on building a big base of consumers, and you're going up against some of the more, the larger OTAs that we all know. So I think where we're seeing the most investment into travel and just the most general interest is in categories where that's not the case. And so that is B2B companies, it's corporate travel, it's fintech products, it's ancillary services, it's businesses that are selling directly to the suppliers, and so there's a more contractual sort of software nature of those businesses, and I think that's where you're seeing the most activity, and that's reflective in some of the IPOs that we talked about.
And just to switch gears a little bit, we've talked a lot about AI and OTAs. Metasearch. I want to talk some metasearch. So on the 3Q earnings call, Booking announced that they were taking a big write-down on Kayak. Is metasearch dead? Is it the first AI casualty? What do you think, Mark?
That's a plausible interpretation. Was that Kayak dude here yesterday? What did he say?
Steve Hafner did not speak. I do believe we had somebody from Kayak here, but
I think it's a plausible interpretation. It seems a little early for Gen AI to have had that kind of impact, but that's certainly where it could go. I mean, the travel planning research process is dramatically better with Gen AI and what ChatGPT and now Gemini are able to show. So, yeah, it does raise issues for the metasearch companies. I guess that's my bias is yes. I guess I'd be concerned.
And Lloyd, I know you and I have probably sparred over many, many years on things like TripAdvisor. What do you think? Is it we past time for metasearch?
Well, it's funny. You pointed out Kayak took a big write down, and TripAdvisor itself is basically reordering the business to focus on their Viator attractions marketplace, and basically saying we're no longer going to invest in the core hotel metasearch, which I think is a smart move. I think they should have done it earlier, and they've got a pretty good asset on the experiences side, and I think it can operate better with the whole company unified behind that, and it's a good category, right? It's still much lower penetration than hotel or air, very healthy unit economics, and so I think that was a smart move. When you look at their organic traffic, the data we show, it is the TripAdvisor brand is in meaningful decline, and I think a big part of that is generative AI. So that core business is in a tough spot, but they do have some. The Viator is doing well, the Fork is doing well. And then they've talked about their own AI product coming out in the next few weeks. I agree with something Mark said earlier, which is these companies, I think he was talking about the OTAs, but Trip and even more so, like they should have been rolling out these products, you know, ages ago. They have so much interesting proprietary data. You would think that they could roll out, you know, reskin an open source model and roll out something really interesting. You know, maybe that will bring new life to a TripAdvisor, but they're in a tough spot given the superiority of what we're getting out of Google and ChatGPT and you know, their scale, those companies' scale and ability to really innovate.
And Emma, I don't know that I want to put you on the spot with talking about a small set with a couple of companies. So let's switch gears a little bit. A couple of years ago here, attraction and activity booking engines. That was the hottest thing going. We haven't heard so much about it, but it's really a hot space. Airbnb has built out experiences. Klook has filed for an IPO. Is this the next big leg of growth in online travel?
I think it's a really important segment. I mean, the points you raised are valid, which is it's one of the segments in travel that is underpenetrated online still. It's a segment that has a really fragmented supplier base, which is traditionally good for marketplaces. It's a segment where the take rate dynamics are generally more positive than in some other segments. I think the question on the segment has always been, from an investor standpoint, around do the unit economics work, you know, given frequency, given access to traffic, et cetera. And to me, I mean, one of the bigger developments in the segment is not that these businesses are growing and doing well, but it's that we just have more disclosure on them because, as you said, Klook filed, Viator is a bigger portion of TripAdvisor. You know, Get Your Guide has disclosed more information publicly, and so I think we're starting to see that from a public standpoint that these businesses, you know, really do work. They're hitting scale, and then I think as you think about the broader ecosystem, the ecosystem around experiences has developed, and so there's B2B suppliers, there's B2C companies, there's software providers, and so just in the same way you've sort of seen this ecosystem around the bigger OTAs develop, that has happened around experiences, and it's becoming increasingly important as, you know, the larger OTAs are thinking about what is the next leg of growth, what are segments that have these dynamics that are particularly positive segments, and so I think experiences falls well in that.
Yeah, interesting. Lloyd, I know you recently reinitiated coverage on the space, and one of your big calls was Airbnb, and one of the underpinnings, well, I'm not going to make your call for you, I'll let you make it, but it's around hotels and Airbnb and the hotel side. What's your take?
Yeah, so we did, and we've covered Airbnb since the IPO and been doing work on it since the HomeAway IPO, so we've spent a ton of time looking at this.
Does anyone here remember HomeAway, by the way? All right. Sorry, Lloyd.
Yeah, no, and so it's interesting. We've never actually recommended Airbnb until this time, and our view had been that growth was decelerating and the valuation multiples were rich. But we always told investors, if you ever hear them seriously start to refocus on hotel, put your pencils down and pay attention. And right before we launched, what did Brian Chesky say on the earnings call? But we are going to be moving, what was the word he used, considerably more aggressively in hotel. And, you know, it's a much bigger addressable market. It's, you know, we've already seen Booking.com has figured out how to interweave hotels and vacation rentals. I get it's, you know, it's not necessarily obvious for Airbnb, but you've got Brian Chesky, who is one of the best product designers out there, really focused on this. And I think what's partially motivating him is the core business at Airbnb is slowing down. It's unattractive to investors, growing, you know, in the second quarter, low single-digit room night growth in the U.S. Now it's gotten a little bit better. I think there's plenty of room for them to continue to grow in the core, but I think there is a sense of urgency over there. I think there's a huge opportunity. I think they have a right to win some share in a really big market. And then lastly, you know, when we talk to the investment community, they've hated Airbnb, and so we like to look more closely at companies that most investors are shunning. It's usually a good opportunity. When you see a structurally good business start to make big changes to address some challenges, that's usually a good time to be looking at these things. That's our view on Airbnb.
I take the other side on that.
Please, I want to hear. So let's get this debate going.
In my experience, a lifetime of covering growth stocks, whenever an investor hears the word investment, bam, multiple gets crushed. Mark, in the winding down seconds here, Airbnb has talked about wanting to be the Airbnb of everything. Do we need that?
No, I think it's going to be a very tough transition for Airbnb to really get material traction in hotels. I hope they can do it, but it also took Booking a long time to get real material traction in alternative accommodations. Airbnb has been sort of a disappointment to me. This is a company that had a really unique business model, great product innovation, and then something happened. We went like 2 years without major innovations other than Airbnb icons. I thought that was just a complete jumping the shark moment, and so I hope they they've got a lot of initiatives now. I really hope that they reaccelerate, but this is what happens with companies. I think they waited too long. They waited till the growth got to single digits, and then all of a sudden we're starting investing. You should have done this 2 or 3 years ago, but that's the past. It doesn't matter. It's all priced in. The question is, of all these new initiatives they have, co-hosting, experiences, services, international market localization, hotels. If they do this right, that growth should accelerate. The stock should work from here. I just wish they had started early, but that's the past. We'll always look forward in the stock market, and I don't know. I'm 50-50 on it. So I hope you're right, Lloyd. I'd love to see company innovate again back to growth.
Mark, Emma, Lloyd, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks,
Great
Jake.
to have you.
Thanks for moderating.